I never planned to act like a poor mother, but sometimes life pushes you into roles you never imagined you'd play. It all started with a single phone call from my son Marcus. His voice sounded warm and excited. "Mom," he said, "I finally want you to meet her family. They're hosting a dinner for us before the wedding." I smiled at first because every mother dreams of that moment, but deep down I felt something tighten in my chest. Marcus loved them. He praised their kindness, their status, their wealth. And every time he mentioned his fiance's parents, I noticed he spoke differently, as if he needed their approval more than he needed mine. Still, I told him I would come. I didn't ask about the restaurant, the dress code, or the cost. I simply said, "I'll be there, baby." What he didn't know was that I had already seen how his future in-laws looked at me from a distance. They smiled, yes, but with that quiet judgment some people carry, the kind that says, "You're not like us." I wasn't offended. I had lived long enough to recognize arrogance when I saw it. But I also knew that wealth makes some people show their true colors faster than honesty ever will. The day of the dinner, I stood in my bedroom looking at two outfits: a beautiful, elegant navy dress I had bought for special occasions, and a simple cardigan and skirt I wore when I went to the grocery store. One made me look successful, the other made me look small. I closed my eyes and chose the simple clothes, not because I wanted pity, but because I wanted to see who they truly were without money in the picture. When I arrived at the restaurant, Marcus's fiancée, Liana, smiled sweetly and hugged me, but her mother barely glanced at my face. Her eyes immediately scanned my shoes, my handbag, my cardigan, and in that one long glance, she had already decided who I was. "Welcome," she said with a stiff smile. "I hope the meal won't be too overwhelming for you." I almost laughed, not at her insult, but at how confidently she delivered it. We sat at the table and everyone began ordering lobster, wine, elaborate dishes I hadn't eaten in years. When the waiter turned to me, I simply said, "Just water, please." The room fell silent for a moment. Liana's father raised an eyebrow. Marcus shifted uncomfortably, and then her mother leaned closer, her voice dripping with false concern. "Oh, you don't have to be embarrassed. We can cover your meal if money is tight." Marcus's face turned red. He tried to change the subject, but I gently placed my hand over his and said, "It's fine, sweetheart. Some things aren't worth explaining." Because inside I had already understood everything. They didn't want a mother for their daughter-in-law. They wanted an image, something to impress their friends, and I didn't fit it. But what they didn't know was that I had nothing to prove to them, and that pretending to be poor would reveal a truth they were not ready for, a truth that would come out sooner than anyone expected. Dinner had barely started when I realized something important. Marcus wasn't just trying to impress Liana's family. He was trying to protect me from them. Every time her mother made a sharp comment, he flinched. Every time her father spoke loudly about success, Marcus's jaw tightened. And every time I stayed silent, he looked at me with guilt in his eyes, as if he blamed himself for bringing me here. But he didn't have to. A mother can endure many things for her child, and I had already decided I was not going to confront anyone. I was simply going to observe. The waiter returned with their expensive dishes, the table filled with rich aromas, butter, garlic, grilled seafood. Marcus whispered, "Mom, you sure you don't want anything?" I smiled at him gently. "I'm fine, baby. I ate at home." That was a lie. But sometimes lies protect peace more than truth ever can. Liana's mother took a slow sip of her champagne. "You know, Marcus," she said, tapping the glass, we've always believed that a family's background matters. Stability, education, class." Her eyes flicked toward me as she spoke, not subtle, not accidental. Liana shifted uncomfortably. "Mom, please." But her mother continued anyway. "We don't want our daughter marrying into unnecessary burdens." The room grew quiet. Marcus tensed. "Mrs. Hale," he said carefully, "my mother is not a burden." She smiled politely. "I'm sure she's lovely, but we all know how some people live beyond their means, always needing help." She said it so casually, so sweetly, that anyone listening might think she was innocent. but I heard the insult clearly. I placed my hands gently on the table, gathering my strength. Then I said in a calm voice, "You're right. Some people do live beyond their means, but others choose to live simply, not because they're poor, but because they're wise." Her eyebrows lifted. She didn't expect me to respond, not with dignity. Marcus exhaled in relief. But Liana's father leaned forward. "So what do you do for work, Mrs. Adams?" Marcus quickly cut in. "Dad," but I raised my hand, stopping him. "It's all right," I said softly. It wasn't the first time I'd been asked in that tone. I kept my answer simple. "I work in community care." His smile sharpened. "Ah, so, not a high income, I assume." I shook my head. "I never cared about income. I cared about raising my son to be a good man." He chuckled under his breath. "Well, I suppose that's admirable in its own way." Marcus gripped his fork until his knuckles turned white. But I stayed calm, because while they judged me for what I wore, what I ordered, what I earned, they did not know the truth. They didn't know about the home I owned, fully paid off. They didn't know about the businesses I invested in over the years. They didn't know about the quiet savings I built, not for myself, but for Marcus's future. And most importantly, they didn't know who I had become after surviving more storms than they could imagine. But I let them assume. Assumptions reveal people faster than questions ever will. After the main courses arrived, Liana tried to lighten the mood. "So, Mrs. Adams," she said with a warm smile, "Marcus told me you like gardening." "Yes," I said, "it keeps me grounded." Her mother scoffed lightly. "I guess hobbies are important when you don't work difficult jobs." Liana's smile faded. Marcus looked like he wanted to flip the entire table. "Mom," Liana whispered sharply, "stop." But her mother waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, I'm just making conversation." Then she looked at me again. "Tell me, how do you plan to contribute to the wedding? Or will Marcus be covering everything?" Ah, there it was, the question she had been waiting to ask. I folded my napkin softly across my lap. "I will contribute," I said calmly, "in ways that matter." She tilted her head. "In ways that matter, my dear, weddings cost money, not good intentions." Marcus muttered under his breath, "Unbelievable." I gave him a small smile, telling him silently to stay calm. Then I looked at Mrs. Hale and replied, "Money comes and goes, but respect is priceless. I'd rather give my son a marriage filled with peace than a wedding filled with debt." The table fell silent again. For a moment, even her husband looked at me with something like respect, but Mrs. Hale wasn't finished. "That's quite a philosophical answer," she said dryly. "But at the end of the day, we believe in equal contributions. Liana's father and I have already put aside a generous amount. It would only be fair for Marcus's side to match it." Marcus put his fork down. "Mom doesn't have to match anything," he said firmly, but her mother ignored him. "Well, Mrs. Adams, what can you offer?" I smiled, a real smile this time, not out of fear, not out of pride, but out of quiet understanding. "I can offer my blessing," I said softly. "And as for money, I prefer to keep my finances private." She leaned back in her seat, victorious. "So, nothing substantial then." I didn't correct her. I didn't need to. Marcus started to stand, but I placed my hand on his arm. "Sit, sweetheart, it's all right." I wasn't angry at them. I wasn't even offended anymore. I was simply learning exactly what kind of people my son was marrying into. The waiter came to clear the plates, and that's when Mrs. Hale leaned closer, lowering her voice. "You know, it would be easier for everyone if you didn't pretend to be something you're not." I looked at her gently. "I'm not pretending," I said. "You are." For the first time that evening, she blinked, confused, thrown off balance, and I knew then I had touched something she didn't want touched, a truth, a insecurity, a fear. People like her always hide something behind their cruelty. Dinner ended soon after, but the night wasn't over. Not by a long shot, because what she didn't know was that I was about to discover something that would change the entire wedding. and the way Marcus saw them forever. When we stepped out of the restaurant, the night air felt cooler than usual. Marcus walked beside me, silent, hands deep in his pockets, shoulders heavy with frustration. Mom, he said finally, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have brought you. I thought, I thought they'd act better. I touched his arm gently. You're not responsible for their behavior, baby. But you didn't deserve that, he insisted. You deserve respect. I smiled softly. I don't need their respect, Marcus. I only need yours. He exhaled slowly, nodding, fighting his anger. His kindness had always been his strength and his weakness. He wanted peace for everyone, even when they didn't want peace with him. We walked toward the car, but Liana's voice stopped us. Marcus, wait! We turned around. She was hurrying toward us, shoes clicking against the pavement. I'm so sorry, she said breathlessly. My mom shouldn't have spoken to you like that. Neither should my dad. I shook my head gently. You're not responsible for their words. But I am, she whispered. They made you feel small, and I didn't stop them. Her voice trembled. She was genuinely upset. Marcus stepped closer to her. It's not your fault, he said softly, pulling her into a hug. You tried. But Liana wasn't finished. She looked at me again, her eyes heavy with guilt. Mrs. Adams, there's something I want to tell you, something I didn't know how to say earlier. I raised an eyebrow. What is it, dear? She swallowed hard. I didn't invite my parents to the proposal dinner. Marcus did. Marcus's eyes widened. Liana, no, she said firmly. You need to hear this. She turned back to me. They've always been controlling, judgmental. They want everything to look perfect for other people. When Marcus proposed, I told him I just wanted the two of us to celebrate quietly, but he insisted on inviting them because he thought they should feel included. I didn't want this tonight to happen, but I couldn't stop it. Her voice cracked. Marcus looked at her, stunned. I just thought, you thought they'd act like normal parents, she whispered, but they won't. They never do. A small part of me softened toward her. Not her parents. Her. She was stuck in a role she didn't choose. I stepped closer and gently placed my hand on her shoulder. You don't need to apologize for them, I said quietly. You are not your parents. She nodded, tears in her eyes. I want you to like me. I want you to accept me. I already do, I said with a warm smile. Marcus wrapped his arm around her, relief washing over him. But just as the tension seemed to fade, a voice cut through the quiet. Oh, so this is where you all ran off to. It was Mrs. Hale. She strode toward us, heels striking the pavement sharply, irritation flashing in her eyes. Her husband followed a few steps behind, tired and embarrassed. I thought we agreed to have dessert together, she said coldly. But instead, you're having little secret meetings outside. Marcus stiffened. Mrs. Hale, we were just talking. About what? She demanded. Liana took a deep breath. Mom, please. No, her mother snapped. I will not be made to look like the villain here. I simply asked a question about finances. Any reasonable family would discuss contributions to a wedding. Marcus stepped forward. I've told you already. We don't need to match your contribution. This wedding isn't a competition. Mrs. Hale laughed, a short, bitter sound. You think money doesn't matter? It matters to everyone, except people who don't have any. Marcus's fists clenched, but before he could reply, her husband spoke for the first time that night. Diane, that's enough. She stared at him, shocked, but he continued, voice low and tired. You embarrassed them. You embarrassed us. I was being honest, she argued. You were being cruel. You. For a moment, her face froze, stunned that her husband was contradicting her publicly. She opened her mouth to speak, but something unexpected happened. Liana stepped between her parents and us. That's it, she said firmly. You always do this. You push and push until everything breaks. Her mother frowned. Are you really taking their side? I'm taking the side of what's right, Liana said, voice trembling but strong. And tonight, you were wrong. Mrs. Hale looked completely thrown off. Her daughter had never challenged her like that. Not with this tone, not with this clarity. Marcus wrapped an arm around Liana's shoulders. I could see how relieved he was. Relieved that she wasn't like them. Relieved that she could stand for something. Mrs. Hale crossed her arms tightly. Well then, she said coldly, if your fiancé and his mother don't want to follow our standards, then maybe this wedding isn't as important to them as we thought. Liana's father sighed deeply. We should go home, Diane. This is not the place. But she ignored him and turned to Marcus instead. If your mother can't contribute financially, she said, then I think it's only fair that you and Liana postpone the wedding until you can match our support. Marcus's mouth fell open. What? She lifted her chin. We can't allow an imbalance, not in finances, not in families, not in status. Liana gasped. Mom, stop. You're humiliating yourself. Mrs. Hale flinched, but only slightly. Then she regained her posture. This is not humiliation, she said. This is standards. Marcus stared at her, shocked. I could see confusion and anger swirling inside him, but me, I wasn't shocked at all. Women like her always choose control over kindness. She wasn't done. Marcus, she said calmly, our daughter is entering a family with very little to offer. Before the wedding can move forward, you both need to show us you're ready for the responsibilities ahead. Marcus's voice dropped to a whisper. What responsibilities? Financial independence, she said. Stability, equal footing. If your mother can't contribute, I finally stepped forward, cutting her off with a gentle voice. She can. Every head turned toward me. Marcus's eyes widened. Mom, I held up a hand. I can contribute, I repeated softly, but not in the way you think. Mrs. Hale smirked. Then how? I took a slow breath. This is not the time for that, I said. But when the moment is right, you will see exactly what I can offer. She blinked, surprised. For the first time all evening, she had no ready reply. Something inside her shifted, hesitation, uncertainty, a tiny crack in her confidence. She stepped back. Her husband gently took her elbow. Let's go home, he said quietly. She didn't resist this time. They walked away toward their car. Liana stood in silence. Marcus exhaled shakily. When the Hale family finally drove off, the parking lot grew quiet again. Liana looked at me with a mixture of sadness and relief. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I touched her cheek gently. You don't need to apologize for other people, I said softly. Just be yourself. That's enough. She nodded, tears forming in her eyes. Marcus stepped close to me. Mom, he whispered. I hate that you feel pressured to contribute. I don't want you to do anything because of them. I smiled gently. I am not doing anything because of them. I am doing it because of you, because you are my son, and your marriage deserves peace. He swallowed hard, emotions tightening his throat. We walked to the car in silence, but inside my chest, something heavy had shifted. Not anger, not fear, something deeper, a realization. Mrs. Hale had made one major mistake tonight, one she didn't even realize yet. She assumed I was weak. She assumed I was small. She assumed I was powerless. But she had no idea what I carried. She had no idea what I had built over the years. She had no idea what my late husband had left behind, and she definitely had no idea what I would reveal when the moment finally came, a moment coming sooner than any of us expected. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. The house was quiet, still, and full of memories. I sat at the edge of my bed for a long time, staring at the morning light on the floor. I kept thinking about what Mrs. Hale said the night before. Her words didn't sting, not anymore. I'd heard worse things in my life, but what she didn't know, what no one knew, was that everything she assumed about me was wrong. I was not weak. I was not broke, and I was not without resources. She saw an ordinary widowed mother. She didn't see the truth, because I had never shown it, not yet. That morning, I decided it was finally time. I brewed a cup of tea, sat at the dining table, and opened the old wooden box my husband had carved for me years ago. Inside were letters, documents, and the last notes he ever wrote to me. My fingers trembled slightly as I lifted the envelope with my name written in his handwriting. Open when the time comes. I had kept it untouched for years, or I always knew the time would reveal itself, and last night it finally did. I opened it slowly. Inside were two things: a short handwritten letter and a folded document that I'd only seen once, years earlier, when he was still alive. I unfolded the letter first. My love, if you are reading this, it means life has brought you to a moment where you must choose strength over silence. I never wanted to leave you with burdens, so I spent years preparing something that would protect you and our son. Tears pricked my eyes, but I kept reading. I know our boy will marry one day. I know not every family will treat you kindly, but remember this: you are the root of this family, the quiet force that held everything together, and you deserve respect. So I am giving you the tools to demand it when the day comes. I placed the letter down gently and opened the folded document. It was the deed to a piece of land, not just any land. It was the land my husband secretly purchased and developed with a friend years before he passed, a land that had now grown in value far beyond anything the Hale family could imagine. The paperwork showed everything: the equity, the savings tied to it, the investment returns, the legacy he had left behind. Something warm filled my chest, not pride, not triumph, but gratitude. My husband was gone, but he was still guiding me, still protecting me, still caring for our son's future. Marcus didn't know yet. I had planned to tell him when the time was right, maybe closer to his wedding day. But last night, Mrs. Hale's demands, her arrogance, her belittling tone, that was the sign. The moment had come, and the truth was not going to sting her. It was going to humble her. I spent the rest of the morning gathering documents, placing them neatly in a folder. When Marcus woke up and saw the table covered in papers, he blinked in confusion. Mom, what's all this? I looked up and offered a soft smile. We're going to see the Hales today. His eyes widened. Why? Mom, please. You don't owe them anything. I shook my head. I'm not going because I owe them. I'm going because they need to understand something, and you do too. Marcus sat down slowly. What are you talking about? I handed him the folded document. This, I said gently, is your father's last gift to us. He unfolded it and read silently. At first confusion, then shock, then something deeper, awe. Mom, this land, these numbers. His voice trembled. Why didn't you tell me? Because grief is heavy, I said quietly, and I didn't want our lives to become a race for money or pride. But now that you're building a home with someone you love, you deserve to know where you truly come from. He set the paper down and rubbed his forehead. All this time, I thought I needed to prove myself to them. But you had all this. You were protecting us alone. I reached for his hand. I wasn't hiding it. I was waiting for the moment when it mattered. And last night, your fiance's family tried to define your worth. I can't allow that. He swallowed hard, eyes shining. Mom. His voice cracked. I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything, I whispered. You only need to stand beside me today. He nodded slowly, squeezing my hand. We drove to the Hale residence in silence. Marcus was nervous. I was calm. When we arrived, Mrs. Hale answered the door with her usual tight smile. Well, this is unexpected, she said. What brings you here? I stepped forward. Last night you mentioned contributions. Her eyebrows lifted. I did. And expectations. She crossed her arms. Yes, I believe families should match each other's support to avoid imbalance. I finished gently. Yes, I remember. Her husband stood behind her, quieter than usual. He looked nervous. I held up the folder. I came to talk about that. Mrs. Hale gestured stiffly toward the living room. Come inside. We sat across from each other. Marcus and Liana sat on the couch, anxious. The air was thick with tension. I opened the folder and placed the documents neatly on the table. This is what I will contribute, I said calmly. Mrs. Hale leaned forward, unimpressed at first, until she began reading. Her confident expression faltered. Her lips parted slightly. She blinked twice. Her breath hitched. She looked up at me, stunned. This this land belongs to you? I nodded. It was my husband's investment. He left everything to me and to Marcus. She scanned the numbers again, flipping pages as if hoping she misread them. This this is far more than your contribution, I finished, still gentle, not a hint of spite in my voice. Yes, it is. Her husband exhaled heavily, rubbing his forehead. Marcus looked at his shoes, embarrassed for her. Liana's eyes filled with tears. Not sadness, but relief. She had always feared her mother's judgment would ruin everything. Mrs. Hale swallowed, trying to regain her voice. But you never said anything because I don't measure people by money, I replied softly, and I don't fight with pride, but I also don't allow anyone to belittle my family. Silence, heavy, humbling, real. Mrs. Hale opened her mouth but couldn't speak. Her husband finally placed a hand on her shoulder. Diane, he whispered, we were wrong. Her face softened, not out of kindness, but out of realization. The realization that her arrogance had no foundation. The realization that she had humiliated herself. The realization that she had judged me without knowing anything about me. I closed the folder calmly. I don't want superiority, I said gently. I want peace. I want our children to build their life without pressure or comparison. If you feel the same, then let's move forward. Mrs. Hale's eyes glistened. For the first time since I met her, she looked human. She nodded slowly. Yes, she whispered. I would like that. Liana released a shaky breath. Marcus leaned back in relief. I stood up, smoothing my dress. Good, I said softly. Then let's build this family with respect, not competition. As Marcus and I walked toward the door, Mrs. Hale spoke again. Mrs. Adams, I paused. Thank you. I gave her a small, warm smile. Respect goes both ways, I replied. The drive home was quiet, but the silence between Marcus and me felt different this time. Not heavy, not tense, just peaceful, like two people finally breathing the same air again after days of holding everything inside. When we pulled into the driveway, Marcus didn't get out immediately. He sat there with his hands resting on the steering wheel, staring out at the garden his father and I planted years ago. Mom, he said softly, I'm sorry I let them treat you like that. I should have defended you sooner. I touched his arm gently. You didn't fail me, I said. You were trying to keep the peace, and sometimes peace makes us quiet in the wrong moments. He bowed his head. But today you weren't quiet. A small smile touched my lips. I wasn't loud either. I looked toward the house, feeling its warmth, its memories. I just told the truth, and sometimes the truth is strong enough. He nodded slowly, the weight lifting from his face. We walked inside together. The house felt different, not because anything had changed, but because I had changed. I had carried years of quietness, years of letting others believe whatever they wanted, but today reminded me that dignity is not silence, strength is not loudness, and kindness is not weakness. Later that evening, Marcus received a message from Liana. She wanted us to come for dinner the next week, her mother included. I could tell he was nervous when he turned to me. Mom, are you okay with that? I took a slow breath. Yes, I said, because today wasn't about winning, it was about understanding, and I think her mother finally understood. He smiled, relieved. Before he went to bed, he hugged me tightly, the kind of hug he used to give when he was little, when he still thought I could fix every problem in the world. Mom, I'm proud of you, he whispered. Those words warmed something inside me that had been cold for years. After he went upstairs, I sat alone in the living room with my tea. The night was calm. The warm humming of the refrigerator, the soft ticking of the clock, the distant sound of a car on the road, all of it felt like life gently settling back into place. I picked up the wooden box again, running my fingers over its carved edges. My husband's handwriting on the envelope felt like a touch from the past. I opened it once more, reading the last lines of his letter. Be gentle, but never invisible. Be kind, but never small. Your strength will shine when the world underestimates you, and that is the moment you will finally see yourself clearly. I closed the letter and held it against my chest. He had been right. I hadn't seen myself clearly for a long time. I had been playing the quiet role, the careful mother, the polite widow, holding my pain in one hand and my pride in the other. But today I finally saw myself the way he saw me, a woman who could speak softly and still shake the room. A woman who could protect her family without raising her voice. A woman who could walk into someone else's home, hold her dignity like a shield, and leave the walls standing, but changed. And as I sat there, the last of the evening light faded from the window. The house was wrapped in a soft glow, the kind that only comes after long days and heavy truths. I whispered, almost to myself, I hope you saw me today, wherever you are, because in so many ways, everything I had done, the patience, the restraint, the strength, was guided by the love he left behind. I looked around the room one more time, feeling the quiet peace settle over me, not the silence of being ignored, not the silence of being underestimated, but the silence of a woman who had finally reclaimed her place without hurting anyone to do it. Before turning off the light, I gently placed the box back on the shelf. Tomorrow, life would go on. There would be wedding plans, family dinners, small arguments, new memories. Some days would be heavy, some would be light, but I knew one thing for sure. I was no longer afraid of being overlooked, no longer afraid of being challenged, no longer afraid of speaking with the strength that had always been mine. And that truly was the quiet gift my husband had left for me. A reminder that real power doesn't shout, real love doesn't demand, real dignity doesn't need approval, real dignity simply is.